Hello, I'm Janice Heppenstall. I'm a professional genealogist and I'm more often to be found writing on my English ancestors blog than posting videos to this channel, but today I do have a video for you, and as you can see it's called In Search of Shackleton's Fold Under the Lost Places. It's the last part of a little series that I've done for my blog about ancestral tourism, by which I mean researching and preparing for a visit to a locality of importance to our ancestors. I said in the last of those posts that I'd do something about locating buildings and streets that no longer exist, so that's what this is. But it's also part of my ongoing one-place study about Shackleton's Fold, and there will be more videos to follow on that topic. There's a blog post published to coincide with this, and you'll find the link to that in the comments below the video. So here's what this video is about. It's about locating individual properties and streets that no longer exist, and I'm going to be working through two examples. I'm going to be using modern and historic maps that I found online. For the first one, I'll be using census documentation. For the second one, I'll be using Photoshop layers. You'll see what I mean by that when I get there. And I did actually visit each location, although you don't need to, but I wanted to, but you can do most of what I did without that. This is aimed at local and family historians, and also people who are doing one-place studies. Also, people who have an interest in 19th century housing for the labouring classes in the United Kingdom, and my two examples are in Birmingham and Leeds. And then a very niche market here, but it's also aimed at people with a family connection to Shackleton's Fold, which existed in New Wortley in Leeds between the 1840s and about 1838. So if that's you, or if you know anybody that does apply to, then if you have an interesting story about your family from that time, from the time that they were living in Shackleton's Fold, or if you have a photograph of Shackleton's Fold, then I'd really love to hear from you, and you can contact me via the blog post that I will link in the comments. So example 1, pinpointing one house in a long street with no house numbers on the map. So this is in the Derrett and Bordersley area of Birmingham, and it's at the time of the 1861 census. The map that I'm using is dated 1855. So here is the census, or at least an extract from the census, and it's the first property listed here that I'm interested in, which has the address number 3, back of 120 Moseley Street. This is the tail end of the entry for that property. The rest of the household are enumerated at the bottom of the previous page, but I'm interested in two people, Edwin Groves and Arthur Groves, aged 19 and 17, that you see here, and they were temporarily lodging at this house while their parents and younger siblings had relocated to a different part of the country, and they were shortly going to be called to go and join them. So this is all I have, and unfortunately for me trying to do this, no houses at all remain on Moseley Street. So I needed to try to find some landmarks that would help me to locate where this 120 Moseley Street and number 3 behind it exists. So working forward from this entry, I didn't have to go very far before I came to the end of Moseley Street. So I now know that I'm at one or other end of this long street called Moseley Street, but I didn't know which end and I didn't know which side of the road. Working backwards from this entry, I had to go quite a number of pages because there's a lot of people living in each house, so there are a lot of people entered on each page. So I had to go back quite a way, and eventually I did come to a landmark, which was a street joining Mosley Street called Brewery Street. And you can see that in the lower left hand corner of this map. So I now know that the area that I'm interested in, I've put this blue border around it. It's bordered on the upper left by Brewery Street, and down at the bottom, Mosley Street forms a T-junction with another road that I've actually cropped off here. But that block there that I've bordered with blue, somewhere in there is where the property I'm looking for is going to be found. So I also know that the census enumerator was walking up Brewery Street. He walked between this block and the one next to it, and then turned right onto Mosley Street and walked down in this southeasterly direction. And that information is going to help me when I'm trying to work out where my house of interest was. Just another couple of things that I want to point out to you before we leave this screen. The other side of the road, at random, I've just picked on a block of houses and I've put a red border around it. Right, now what you see in here is 8 houses. It's 2 blocks, 2 rows of 4 houses, and they are back-to-back houses. So if you are not familiar with back-to-back houses, or if you do know what they are but you've never seen them on a map, this is what they look like on a map. They've got that telltale long dividing line running along the length of the block. So what we have here is 4 houses on the right, and they only have windows and doors on the right, and they look out in that direction. And on the other side, they only have windows and doors on the left, and they look out in that direction. Where you would expect in a house to have a back door and more windows, they don't, because they join onto each other. Now, if we just take a step back and look at the rest of this extract from this map, you'll see that there are a lot of back-to-back houses here. And in fact, this whole area is set out like this. There's lots of back-to-back houses. It's an area of for the labouring classes, and in fact, these back-to-back properties were thrown up hurriedly when people started moving in, started flocking to Birmingham as the Industrial Revolution progressed, and more housing was needed in a hurry. So this was in fact very poor quality housing, and that's why it has all now been demolished. So if you now look finally at the other side of the road in the block that I'm interested in, I've put another border around, a green border around some houses. So if you remember, I'm looking for number 3 back of 120 Mosley Street. So if we think of 120 as being the principal house on Mosley Street, and then there's obviously some houses behind it. So what I've put this border around, there are 2 houses on the Mosley Street end. I don't yet know what numbers they are. One of them could be 120, but there's 2 of these principal houses, and if you look very closely, you'll see 2 tiny little lines between them, and that shows that there was a passageway through at ground floor level between these 2 houses, and the passageway leads into the yard behind, and then behind in that long yard there are 6 houses, so they would be numbers 1 to 6 back of whatever that is on Mosley Street. Now that information helps me to narrow down even further where the property is that I'm looking for, because in this block a lot of it is taken up with the large brewery buildings, but there's only this kind of centre moving over towards the lower right of the map. that is actually filled with this kind of feature where you've got the principal house on Mosley Street and a number of houses behind that in yards. So it's that part of Mosley Street right there, just that little part. That's where I'm going to find my house. And to be honest, if that was the closest I got in this case, I would be happy with that, because I really only want to know what kind of area were they living in. But actually I can do better. I can find the exact house. So let's continue. So in this example, working out precisely which of these houses on Mosley Street was 120, it was just a question of reading the census enumerator's entries and counting how many houses there were at the back of all of the numbers of these principal houses, and then making a list. And I then compared that list of house numbers and the number of properties behind them to this map. And I found that 113 Mosley Street was listed with 7 houses behind it. 115 was listed with 6 houses, 117 with 6, and so on. And the pattern coincided perfectly with the numbers of houses in each yard as shown on the map, starting from the left and moving over towards the right. And it was then almost just a matter of allocating the corresponding house numbers. But I say almost, and that's because actually the numbers of the houses on Mosley Street didn't quite correspond. And to resolve this, I had to get into the mind of the census enumerator. I realised that he was walking down Mosley Street in this southeasterly direction, like I said before, and he visited number 113, and then he went into the yard where there were 7 houses, and he listed them as back of 113, although they were actually at the back of 114. And the same applies to all the other properties, where he gives the number of the last house he visited before entering the yard, even if it wasn't actually the house that the houses are physically at the back of. Also on the census, 120 Mosley Street is listed with 9 houses behind it, but on the map, the corresponding yard to what I now know is 120 has 10 houses, and I've put a red border around it there. The discrepancy here really can just be put down to one house being currently uninhabited, or perhaps no one home when the enumerator called. And I'm happy that this is the correct yard, and the probability is that number 3 back of 120 Mosley Street is the property that I've marked with the red X. So I'm very happy with that. We now move on to example 2, and this was harder. Locating a street with no apparent guiding structural landmarks, and this is about finding Shackleton's Fold, which is my one place study. I really do need to know where it was. So this is Shackleton's Fold. I've highlighted it in yellow on an 1893 map. It is so easy to find on any historic map. You've got the railway line and all these sidings. You've got this very distinctive X-shaped crossover of 2 significant roads. They are Gelderd Road and Whitehall Road, and anybody in Leeds knows those roads. So that, you know, they're very well known, very easy to find. This X shape is very distinctive. And then below that there's another crossroad which is formed where Wortley Lane joins Gelderd Road, and Shackleton's Fold runs from Whitehall Road in the north to Wortley Lane in the south. And as it does so, its location creates this sort of triangular shaped plot between the fold and the various intersections, the plot formed by the various intersections of all of those roads. And there's this distinctive mill pond in the middle. So it's really easy to locate. And again, just before we leave this, if you just step back and look at the rest of the map, And what you'll see is again, this is an area of back-to-back housing. Each of the, with the exception of Shackleton's Fold itself, each of the blocks of housing has that telltale mark along each block. So it's an area for the labouring classes, back-to-back housing. Okay, so how does this compare with a modern map? Well, the answer is that it really doesn't compare with a modern map. All of that housing has been demolished, all of it. Right up the centre of the area that I'm interested in, there's a dual carriageway. Geldred Road and Whitehall Road do still exist, but you can see that the road has been played about with a bit. They certainly don't have that distinctive cross that I really needed to be able to say with certainty, well, it's just a few yards along from there. And because they don't actually cross, I can't trust really that where it looks like they might have crossed if they were going to, if you see what I mean, where that would have happened. The best that I can say is that I've put this circle on the modern map, and I think that Shackleton's Fold is somewhere in there, but that's not good enough for me because I am doing a one-place study. I'm publishing information about this, and if the best I can say is, well, it's somewhere where Dunelm's car park is. It's not good enough. There's also a road which is now a slip road from the dual carriageway. It looks like it might be on the same site as where Wortley Lane was, but it's not called Wortley Lane anymore. So again, I can't trust that. So it's very difficult to be able to locate the road I need based on what we now have. And then I noticed something. I noticed that there was one building that remained, and I've highlighted it here in pink. It's the former Whitehall Road School. The school building is still there. It's exactly the same shape as it was, except for there's a little extension built out the back. It's no longer a school, but the plot is still the same, and what was the playground is now a car park. So this is how I'm going to be able to locate Shackleton's Fold. So I went to the area and I took this photograph. Because it's no longer a school, I could enter what was the playground, and I walked all the way around taking photographs. And actually, this building is of importance to the history of Shackleton's Fold because it's the school where the children from Shackleton's Fold went. So quite apart from the fact that it's going to help me to find where Shackleton's Fold was, it's an important building. So I left the playground, and if you look in the modern satellite map, you can see a long, thin, rectangular building with some trees next to it, and then a triangular plot of land which is formed by the roads joining the dual carriageway. I went and I stood on that triangular plot of land, and you can see the school there. So I was standing with looking at the back of the school, and that's when I got up side-by-side maps on my phone. Now, if you don't know the National Library of Scotland Maps website, I really do recommend that you get to know it. It's got all kinds of maps, including Ordnance Survey maps and town maps, all different scales, all different periods, and it will really help in your genealogy, local history, one-place studies. So if you don't know it, do go and look at it. But they also have this side-by-side maps feature, which is really helpful. So the idea is that you get up on the modern screen, the area that you're that you are looking for, you get something that you can focus on in the middle of the map, and then you look in the other side and you'll see how it was then, or I think you can do it the other way around as well, you know, get up the old one and then look to see what's there now. However, in this case, it didn't work for me. So you can see where you can see where Whitehall Road is, the school, on the modern map. But on the historic map, it's much further over to the left. And I think that is about 50 yards difference. And I already know to within 50 yards where Shackletons Fold was. So it's not good enough for me. It's not going to help me. Also, it's a very small scale map, the historic one here. And the buildings are just sort of these sort of shaded areas. And also, I think that the scale of the two main roads, which are Gelderd Road and Whitehall Road, I think that they're too big. And all of this kind of messed with my head, and I just could not work it out. The best I could say was that it looks like Shackletons Fold is roughly where I've put this yellow oval. But I wanted to know with more certainty than that. So back home, I had all of this information, all of my technology at my fingertips, and what I decided to do was work in layers in Photoshop. So I imported a section of the old map, the 1893 map that I'd been using, the one that I've already shaded in Shackletons Fold, and I placed on top of that the modern map that we've just seen, and I played about with the opacity of the top layer so that I could see the old map through the modern one, and I placed the school building in the modern map exactly on top of the school building in the old map. I could then see through to where I'd shaded Shackletons Fold in yellow on the historic map, and I just drew around it with this red border. So I now know exactly where Shackletons Fold, the site of Shackletons Fold is, and it straddles that dual carriageway. So I'm not going to be able to go wandering around there thinking, well, this is where number 6 was, this is where number 13 was, or anything like that. But I do now know exactly where it is. And that's it, job done. So what can we take from this? Well, the first thing is that historic maps are a great resource. Search for as close as possible to your year of interest, and look for the largest scale available. 25 inches to the mile is perfect if you can find it. Do get to know that National Library of Scotland Maps website, and also see their side-by-side maps as well. It didn't work for me in that example, but it does normally. Then census enumerators books, they're for so much more than looking up details about our ancestral families, although of course that's what you're going to be looking for when you first go to it. But when you've got that information, if you want to go in deeper, you see I used them here in conjunction with maps looking for landmarks. You can also look at the other households around the one that is yours, and you can see what kind of work they do, what kind of area this is. And then when an area is changed out of all recognition, like Shackletons Fold example, if you have access to something like Photoshop that you can use layers and change opacity, then you can get your bearings by doing that. So think outside the box, and if one strategy doesn't work, then you've always got others that you can think of. Just keep going until you find something that works. Finally, most of these maps came from the National Library of Scotland Maps website, and they do require you to give a full citation for each map and also a link. Well, I gave the full citation on the pages where the maps first appeared. I have got the links, but obviously you're not going to be able to use them. So again, in the blog post that I will be putting in the comments below this video, The link to the blog post, if you go there, you will also be able to find workable links that will take you to the various pages of the National Library of Scotland website. So I hope there's something in here that you found useful. If so, please do give this video a like. If you think somebody else might like it, particularly anybody who you happen to know has Shackletons Fold history, I know that's a big ask, but please do share it, and thank you very much for watching.